Alright, today I'm looking at a King Quad 750. Obviously I've got it running now, and the reason why I wanted to keep it running is because if I shut it off, it'll actually won't start again until it completely cools down. So I wanted to show you what it was doing. If I let off the gas at all, it wants to go down and die. You can hear the radiator fan running at this point. I've got it fairly warm. What I was doing was blading the driveway with a small blade. It's fairly warm, and if I were to let off the gas at all, it would die, and I go to start it back up again, and it'll have a hard time starting. And that's what it keeps on doing. So we're gonna try to diagnose this, and then we're gonna go ahead and fix it. I'm gonna show you what we do to fix this King Quad 750. If you guys got questions or comments, make sure and leave those below. Thanks again for watching. Removing and replacing the fuel pump on the Suzuki King Quad 750. We've shot a handful of other videos on this four-wheeler. Make sure you check those out. We've done complete service on this machine. We've done front and rear differentials, drive shaft replacement. We've done stator and magneto, also flywheel replacement on this. But today we're going to get into the fuel pump. I'm going to show you what that looks like. I'm going to show you how to replace that. So we're going to remove the rear fender, we're going to get into the fuel pump, we're going to replace it, then we're going to put everything back together again. So make sure you follow along that entire process. If you guys got questions or comments, make sure you leave those in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. All right, a lot of this is going to be repeated just because, like I said, we've done another video of this in the past. So I'm going to go super quick. If you guys got questions or want more detail, make sure you check that other video out. And I'll put a link of that in the description below. But pull the seat off here, just latch in the back, set this aside. We definitely want to get that out of the way so we're not tripping on it. Then we've got Phillips screws all the way around, also on the other side, and that's going to detach the rear fender from the footwell. And they've got rubber grommets on the back side, which can be kind of a pain in the rear, especially if you've been in a lot of manure and mud and dirt, which you typically would, being an all-terrain vehicle. Those can sometimes be a bear to get out, but we'll work through all 1, 2, 3, 4, and then same on the other side. So you've got 8 of those total, and then we'll come back. All right, then we've got these 4 off. We've pulled this panel loose. You don't have to completely remove it, although it wouldn't take much to just finish off removing that. We're gonna undo our positive and negative terminals on our battery. We're actually gonna pull that battery completely out because it's sitting inside a compartment in this rear fender. So then we're going to start pulling electrical components. The CDI box, you just remove like that. We are going to remove it completely because we've got to fit this connector out this about 2" by 3" square here. So a couple of these components are going to have to remove, like this relay here. We're going to be able to shove through this starter relay. We're going to have to remove that one. This winch actuator is going to make it a little bit more of a challenge. What I'm going to do is actually take a picture of how these go, because those posts going on the right way. That way our winch, the in and out and everything is going the right direction. You got a Phillips screw in the back here up top. We can remove that. And then to remove this rack, we've got three 12mm bolts on either side. So 3 on this side, 3 on this side. And we'll go ahead and remove those at this time. We've got the electrical components disconnected. We've got the fuse box off. The actuator is completely disconnected. Starter relay is pretty much disconnected. I guess I got one more wire there. Rear rack, we've got 2 10mm bolts on either side here, one underneath the left-hand side and one on the right. And then again, those 3 bolts that we pulled off. So that can just be set aside. We're getting real close here. Like I said, we just have this one electrical relay that we got to remove. Let's see, it looks like we got to remove the negative terminal. So we'll pull that, then we'll start shoving. As we're removing this, we'll start shoving these electrical connectors through this little opening here. Same way with up front here in front of where the battery was. That way we can just get them all out of here. That way we can get our rear fender removed. Obviously gonna have to pull our fuel tank cap off, but we're gonna wait to do that until we're completely ready to pull this. That way we're not dropping dirt and debris down inside this fuel tank. We're to the point now where we're going to remove this rear fender. I'm going to take this cap off, set it underneath. That way when we're pulling this fender, any sand and grime that's on this fender isn't going to drop down in there. And then you can just start working these connectors through this hole here. On this, remember on my other video, underneath of here, you've actually got a connector that's going to be holding a cable on. That's directly underneath your battery case, right behind your regulator rectifier. So just go ahead and remove that. Definitely want to remove that, or you're going to be fighting that rear fender to get it off of there. And then we'll start working it out. Once we got that fender out of the way, in this case set aside here, we've got a couple more fasteners and then we'll be able to slide this fuel tank out. So we've got these little clips, and what I use is actually a pick. So what I do is stick it on there in the middle and then pull it out with this side of the pick. And it's just a push pin, pretty simple setup there. I'm gonna set it with our other fasteners. We've got the one down, where was that other one? Oh, down below here behind the rear, your rear heel, your left heel. And then the last one is actually a Allen bolt, and this is a 5mm Allen, and that sits directly right above the left rear shock. So pull that one. Toolbox we're actually going to pull off all at the same time. Pull that off with it. I think that can all come together then. That way we just get it out of the way. That's going to expose then the entire fuel tank. 10mm bolt right here behind the fuel cap, right directly in the center of the machine. Straight down is another 10mm, and then right here behind the regulator rectifier is our, I believe, our last one. So those are the three that hold the fuel tank in. We'll see if that moves. Yep, see it shifts out there. So next thing we're going to do is take, before we pull this completely out, because I don't want to put tension on either our fuel line or this electrical connector here. We'll put a little pressure down on that pin and pull that connector off, and then we'll take and pinch these two clips together, and then we're able to just take and pull our fuel tank off. Now there probably will be a little bit of fuel that squirts out of here. Not bad. So now our fuel tank, besides this line, is completely disconnected. We've actually drained down our fuel, not completely, but most of it's gone. I'm going to remove this connector here, that way we can keep all of these lines attached to the four-wheeler. So being careful when you pull it out, you don't damage the connector on top of that fuel pump. And you can see there that we have our fuel pump now exposed. You'll have a little bit of fuel dripping out of this line. It'll eventually run out of our line, but not to make a bigger mess of the situation. Now we've got our fuel pump here. I'm going to take this and set it up on the bench. That way you guys can see exactly what we got going on. All right, trying to stay out of your way here, and yet wrestle this fuel, this deal off. Go ahead and spin it off of here. I believe Suzuki makes a special tool for it. It's not necessary, just being as it's plastic, it's not going to be that tight. If it is, you might have some other issues. So remove that larger nut there. Then this should have a pretty good seal on it, which this one does. And we're not going to notice anything on this fuel pump that's bad, unfortunately, because it wasn't completely bad. And if you guys remember that picture or that video that I took, kind of explaining the situation, you'll remember. So pulling that one out, that's what it looks like there. Not seeing dirt and debris down in there. We'll set this aside. We'll grab our new one here, keep that seal on it. Stick that down into place here and slide it down. There we go, it's as simple as that. So make sure that seal seats properly. That'll be a bad day if that leaks. You could use a little Vaseline, a little grease if you need to lubricate it going down in there, but also not completely necessary. And what you might do, we shoved it on first, but I might take and actually pull it back off. I think it's going to be a little bit easier. yeah, that's gonna be easier. What you don't wanna do is shove that whole thing down in there. Oh yeah, that feels good there. Okay. What I'm trying to do is keep this fuel pump from spinning, because evidently it does spin in there. I didn't actually think that it would spin that far. But if you remember, we made a white line there and there. So that's how far we need to go. But what you definitely don't want to do is grab this post here and keep that from spinning. I'm kind of putting a little bit of pressure on that connector. Okay, fuel pump is on, and we're gonna get ready to throw this back in the four-wheeler. All right, let's slide that front end first. Just being careful not to get into those connectors again. So get it in, then you gotta actually tip it quite a ways down, fuel tank towards the tire, kind of slip it in, and then slide it back up, fold it up. So tip it clear down, pull this tab up above your mount, all while trying to be real careful with your connector here. Once you get that into place, just verify your bolts are gonna line up there. Making sure your wires and everything are in place. Connector is gonna line up there. We're actually just gonna take and snap that on. We wouldn't have to quite yet. Same with this hose connector. And then our last thing here, wouldn't have to, again, hook it up quite yet, but just so we don't forget, I'm gonna go ahead and slide this fuel, if you can see there, that fuel line, just make sure it connects into place. You can hear it click there. You can give it a tug, make sure it's secure. Then we can start putting our 3 10mm bolts in. These grommets can wiggle around a little bit on our fuel tank. So if something isn't lining up quite right, just wiggle that grommet around rather than try to slam your fuel tank around. Okay, all 3 of those are on. Now we're gonna put our panel back on. And we've got our 2 push pins on the bottom behind our left heel. We'll get them to, if you can see that there, that position, and then we'll shove them in, and then we'll square up that clip or push it so it's flush. And it's so far back in here, you can't really see it. So the panel's on. Now we can start going back together with our electrical connectors as well as our rear fender there. You guys can see here, that's the cable line that I was talking about. Again, I think that's your parking brake from your left hand. But you want to make sure that doesn't hook on anything. Also make sure you get that hooked up, because that holds that cable from just resting on that crankcase and getting hot and melting. So pretty important to have that one hooked up. First thing I like to shove through is our relay, or our fuse box and relays there. That's gonna have the longest connector or longest wires on it. We're getting close here. A couple more wires stuck underneath here. We got a relay. Once you can get that fuel tank cap switched around there, do that. All right, seated down there properly, everything looks good. We can start hooking electrical lines back up, relays here, just one at a time, work through them, figure out, try to remember where they go. If you took a picture of them, that's great. Sometimes, a lot of times what I'll do, that way I don't forget anything. So, all right, to finish this one out now, we put the battery on the battery charger, we've hooked up all the cables, sorted out all of the electrical wires, connectors, relays, stuff like that, put them into place there, secured them, fastened the bolts around the edges here, the plastic grommets there, took care of those, put the rack on. We've had that battery charging now for a little bit. It was a little bit low, so that battery I feel like is getting a little bit weak, but Now we're ready to go. It's probably going to crank over for a little bit while it's sucking fuel up from that fuel tank and pulling it into the actual fuel pump itself. So we might have to give it a little bit of time, crank, and then it should fire up. You'll hear a little bit when you turn that key on. That's your fuel pump cycling, and what that should be doing is actually filling that fuel pump up with fuel, which should eliminate some of the delay in starting up. You can hear it cycle there maybe, and then you hear a click. So